Hi guys, and welcome to this video. I hope you're all doing well. For today's case, guys, we are going to be going to Thailand. Now, I feel like I've done quite a few Thai videos on my channel, and I'll probably have more Thai cases because I actually always find quite interesting criminal cases in Thailand for some reason, and this one is no different. This is quite an odd case, almost amusing, I want to say, a bit light-hearted but still not good. So I'm going to put a disclaimer out that this case involves substances. I don't feel it's anything so shocking again that it's going to disturb anyone, but I have to put out a disclaimer. It is quite hot, guys, so I've got the windows open, I've got my mini fridge on, so if you do hear any outside noises, I do apologise for that in advance. So as I said, guys, today we are going to be going to the country of Thailand, and more specifically the province of Hanoi in Thailand, and our perpetrator of today's case, shall I say, is 38-year-old Quy. Now, not a lot is known of the background of this particular perpetrator of today's case. It's just known that he's male and he's 38, and obviously he's Thai. Now, this case takes place in a psychiatric hospital. So it starts in a psychiatric hospital, and Quy has somehow been interned into a psychiatric hospital. As I said, there's not a lot of background that's known in regards to the perpetrator specifically, but somehow he ends up in a psychiatric hospital in 2018, and he seems almost like, I want to say, generally like a model patient, like the patient who is given their medication and has to do certain things and classes and things and just goes along with it. He seems like that patient, and he's also very sociable and chatty with other patients and the clinical staff of the hospital, and is the type of patient that never really causes any issues. This is how he is from the get-go of this case in 2018. So over the next year or two, he is this very sociable person who's chatting with the different people in the hospital and clinical staff. Everything seems fine, whereas you've got other patients who have got bigger issues or who are disturbing the peace in the psychiatric hospital and things like this. He is not that patient. He's the chill patient, just going about what he needs to do and waiting to be discharged from the hospital. That's Quy, basically, right? But this is all part of his plan, because the first year or two, 2018, 2019, goes without a hiccup, and he is developing these relationships more closely, I want to say, with the clinical staff, and he's also gathering data. Now, you guys might think, okay, a psychiatric patient, why are they gathering data in a psychiatric hospital? They're there as a patient, not as a member of staff. But he is trying to find out who are the patients who've been admitted to the hospital as well as having psychiatric issues, but because they've been using Class A illicit substances. You're probably thinking, why is he gathering data on the number of patients who have been using Class A substances, and then he's developing all these very friendly relationships with clinicians, nurses, lab technicians and people like this, right? And what he starts to do is he starts to do a whole reinstallation, revamp of his actual hospital room. When I say revamp, guys, I don't think I've ever seen anyone who's done this in a hospital room before, ever come across something like this. When I read this case, guys, I was like, I've never been in a hospital where I've seen something like this. So what he does is he first of all starts soundproofing the room. Yes, you heard that right, with insulation, soundproofing the room, right? How you would maybe soundproof actually like a music studio like that, putting additional stuff on the wall and doing all of that in a psychiatric hospital. Now, some people might think, okay, if you've got other really noisy patients or whatever, you'll soundproof the room to like hear less noise from the other room. So technically it could be logical, but why, as the patient, are you the one who is soundproofing your own hospital room, right? Then the next thing he does is he decides to install strobe lights. You know, like those party lights that you have, guys, when you go to like a nightclub and you have those kind of disco lights of all the different colours. He decides to install that into his hospital room. which again, in any hospital, psychiatric or otherwise, it's not normal to install party lights on your ceiling everywhere like it's a nightclub. I'm not talking like an LED strip that you stick on the back of your computer or around your desk. I'm talking like proper strobe lights all over the ceiling like it's a nightclub, right? That's the next thing he does. And then you're not even ready for this, or maybe you can guess what's next, is he gets a DJ set. Yes, that's right. The DJ set that you see with DJs like David Guetta, for example, he decides to install an entire DJ mixing set in his soundproofed psychiatric hospital room. I'm telling you guys, you can literally not make this shit up, right? So he installs this whole DJ set, the strobe light, soundproofing, and you're probably thinking, guys, at this point that, oh my God, maybe this guy is the next major Thai DJ or something, right? But you'd be wrong. So he installs all this, and this is over time. So I'd say this is happening around 2019, 2020 approximately, okay? Now, in this whole time, it said that apparently none of the doctors, nurses, clinical staff or anyone noticed anything, and they didn't know that all of this was in his hospital room, even though they have full access to the room because it's a psychiatric hospital where they have to medicate the patients, etc. Somehow they didn't know all this equipment was in the hospital room. So anyway, what happens is Quy decides, right, I need to put the next part of my plan in place. I've done all my DJ set in my room. I've collected my data on which patients are ex-Class A substance users, and I've made friends with all the clinicians, healthcare staff, lab technicians, etc. in the hospital. I've been here for a good 2 years now. So now he's been there from like 2018 to around 2020. And the next part of his plan comes into place. And this is where he brings in one of the doctors of the hospital that he's befriended called Vu. Vu is an actual physician and doctor in the hospital. And he puts a plan into place where the doctor will kind of, shall I say, let the next part of Quy plan kind of slide and just go under the carpet and under the radar, shall we say. So what Quy does next is he brings in his friends and connections, about 8 different guys, and they pose as delivery drivers, taxi drivers, caretakers, it said, so people coming to the hospital that are, they're like carers for the patients, and he involves them in this whole plan, right? And these caretakers and taxi drivers are bringing Class A substances into the hospital and delivering them to Quy room. They are bringing in methamphetamine, ketamine, ecstasy, notably, to say but a few different substances. And then remember all those patients that Quy has collected all that data on, who are the ex-users of Class A substances. This is the next part of his plan. He starts calling all those patients to his room progressively and dealing all these Class A substances, ketamine, methamphetamine, ecstasy, out of his psychiatric hospital room. Remember that he's got all these strobe lights in there, the DJ set, the room is soundproof, so you can't hear anything from outside the room, and he is playing rave music and techno music, guys, in the room, and the patients going in and out, taking all these party substances and partying to this techno rave music in Quy room. Not only are the patients coming in there and out of there, the hospital staff are also coming in and out of there. Nurses, doctors, lab technicians, they're also going in and out of there and coming out of there a few hours later as well, and having all this techno music going on. And this goes on for a good 9 months to a year or so, I want to say. The hospital also has like a tennis court and some kind of other like greenery park area. And so Quy is not only dealing from his psychiatric hospital room, he's also throwing substances out the window from his 2nd story window into the tennis court and the park for his clients that are coming to collect substances. So he's dealing out his window and also directly from his hospital room for a good 9 months to a year or so. The amount of substances in the room is a lot. It said that from the whole time this has gone on, there's like 6 kilos, 15 kilos of substances. This is not like minimal amounts. This is like a lot of substances at one time in the room over this period of time. This is like all the time there's a certain amount of substances in the room, because he's got all these patients and clinical staff coming in and everything else, right? Now, it's said that some of the, as I said earlier, that the staff have said they never noticed anything. One of the heads of the hospital, who was a lady, I think she's called Dr. Lou, she said afterwards that, you know, it was normal for patients to engage in music and singing. Was it normal to have like rave parties in the room? But apparently she said this was very good, you know, like psychologically and emotionally for patients to have music on and singing in the room. Anyway, somehow after, I said, a good 9 months to a year, information gets back to police, and I don't know how the information got back, because as I said, this went on for months and months and months, and it's not where you would go past this room, guys, and think, oh, this is a bit, you know, conspicuous, like under the radar. This is someone having techno raves in their hospital room with a DJ set and strobe lights and dealing substances. It's not really under the radar, right? But somehow it got back to police, and I feel like I've said this before in other videos, like sometimes you just don't know how the information gets back to police, but clearly it must have been some kind of tip off from a member of staff or another patient in the hospital that's gone to police and tipped them off, because else, again, this is a situation where I feel like it could have gone on even longer had the police not discovered it. So the police get light of this, they come to the hospital and they do a drugs raid. The police come in, they arrest Quy, they arrest Vu, the other doctor, remember, that was involved as well. They arrest some of the lab technicians also, and there's a head of department, the lady, Dr. Lou, she was also arrested, and then all of the people that were kind of, you know, posing as like taxi drivers and stuff working for Quy as well, they were all arrested. There was about 8 of them. They're all taken into custody at the police station. And you know, in Thailand, guys, like for a drugs substance offence, class A, that's immediate death penalty. Like, it's a very, very serious offence in Thailand. It's not 2-3 years, 9 years in prison. It's death sentence. They don't play over there. And so the court case starts, and amazingly, I say amazingly, let me start with the worst first. So Quy and Vu, the other doctor, they got the death sentence immediately because it was drug dealing from a hospital room. And when the police did the raid, they found 15 kilos of class A substances in the psychiatric hospital room, in Quy room. So that was, I mean, 15 kilos, like, that's immediate death sentence anyway. Then the doctor was facilitating the use, and he's a medical professional as well. So he was like, it was like conspiracy to aid drug dealing, basically. So he got death sentence as well. And all the other staff, these ones posing as taxi drivers, caregivers, and like the other clinical staff and stuff, they got like sentences of like 2 to 3 years and then suspended, but they didn't get death sentence. Sentencing for this case happened in like 2021, 2022, but since then, I think it was about a year ago, there has also been a second case in Thailand with a lady this time, I think in her 40s, who again posed as a patient with a psychiatric condition, and she also set up a drug ring in a psychiatric hospital while she was posing as a patient. Now, this case, guys, is one of the oddest criminal cases I've come across. There are some odd ones. Sometimes I do very serious cases on my channel, and other times I tried to find ones which are a bit more bizarre and strange and out there. And this was one of those ones. I discovered it actually maybe about 6-7 months ago. And I was like, this is really bizarre, but I couldn't pull enough information, like find out enough about the case at the time. And now I had a bit more information. So I was like, let me do this video. But this case is so bizarre. And the one thing I actually wondered, and you guys can comment down below as well, is do you think that the perpetrator of today's case, Quy, actually had a psychiatric condition? Or do you think that he actually infiltrated the hospital and posed as a patient with a psychiatric condition just to be able to set up this whole drug ring? Let me know what you guys think down below about this case. And if you think that this particular guy posed as a patient, and technically he didn't have, I mean, when they went through the case, it didn't come out in the court case that he actually had a mental health condition. So let me know what you guys think of this case. If you've got suggestions, of course, for other criminal cases on other continents like Asia, Africa as well, also South America, do let me know down below, and I will come back to you soon with another case.